Detroit city government is a service institution that recognizes its subordination to the people of Detroit. The city shall provide for the public peace, health, and safety of persons and property within its jurisdictional limits. The people have a right to expect aggressive action by the city's officers in seeking to advance, conserve, maintain, and protect the integrity of the human, physical, and natural resources of the city from encroachment and or dismantlement. The people have a right to expect city government to provide for its residents decent housing, job opportunities, reliable, convenient, and comfortable transportation, recreational facilities and activities, cultural enrichment, including libraries, art and historical museums, clean air and waterways, safe drinking water, and a sanitary, environmentally sound city. Keep it locked. The Black Detroit Democracy Podcast starts right after these messages.
Have you ever dreamed of being on the airwaves? Well, the Authentically Detroit Podcast Network is here to make those dreams come true. Formerly known as the Deep Network and located inside the Stoudemire, the Authentically Detroit Podcast Network offers studio space and production staff to help get your idea off of the ground. Just visit authenticallydet.com and send a request through the contact page.
Wake up, Detroit. Welcome to the Black Detroit Democracy Podcast. Every week, we open this podcast with a reading of the preamble to the Detroit City Charter, read by the one and only Bryce Detroit. The City Charter is our constitution, which defines our rights and the way government should work. I'm Donna Davidson, President and CEO of the Eastside Community Network.
And I'm Sam Robinson, founder of Detroit 1 Million.
Thank you for listening in and supporting this expanded effort to build another platform of authentic voices for real people in the city of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. The purpose of this podcast is to encourage Detroit citizens to stay vigilant in the fight for justice and equality, with a special call to action for Black Detroit. We seek to build awareness of our history as a gateway to freedom, a beacon for justice, and a laboratory of liberation. Welcome back to the Black Detroit Democracy Podcast. It's time for Word on the Street, where we break down what everybody's been saying behind the scenes. Sam, what have you heard?
Well, Donna, good to be here and virtually with you. It's a snow day today, and so I'm thinking about all the kids and all your folks that were able to stay home today, all the parents that didn't have to drive their kids to work, and all the bus drivers that got a day off.
Can we start with Michigan firing its head coach today?
I see this news is coming on my Twitter, and It's been a decade and a half since the first thing that I thought of was what football team has, what coaches. Michigan State, they just got this Northwestern coach who people say, did a lot with a little bit. Northwestern has rigid academic standards that, mean Pat Fitzgerald, when he was there as the head coach, I think he didn't do very well the last few seasons. They'll say, well, it's because he didn't have that great of talent and he's going to have more resources now. So now Michigan is in a position now. Sherrod Moore, this black head coach, I believe he was the first black head coach in the team's history, correct?
Yeah. So, I was asked in another group, they said, do I think he's going to survive? And I said, no, because when you have a $12 million, $10 million quarterback, through the NIL, you have to perform a little better. I know he's a freshman, but they're paying this guy. And so, all bets are off. And other than that, the team felt like it was kind of mediocre to me. And as a longtime Michigan fan, that was kind of disturbing. But I think the other thing is that when Michigan State upgraded its football coach, Michigan has no choice but to try to improve, So right. Maybe I'm being unfair, but I don't think that the real reason for the termination is the reason given because of an inappropriate relationship. I think they hired a private investigator to find a reason to hire him because they gave him such a large contract. You couldn't really fire him without cause, without incurring a lot of debt. Now, This could be, incorrect. This is just my guess. I always assumed he would be gone, and now he is.
Well, you were right. I will tell you that it's sort of unfortunate. This poor young woman staffer is having her Instagram and name all over social media. And I just, I don't think, she's a subordinate of the guy. And so it's an imbalanced relationship. Right. It's not quite Mel Tucker, right? It's, so I guess somewhat similar, but Mel Tucker was a whole different.
Not similar. If she's a subordinate, then we have to assume that she did not have full control over her decision-making. And maybe she did, right? But I think that, the reason why it's not allowable is because of the undue influence that somebody who is supervising somebody can exert over a subordinate. And I think it's important to respect her privacy because he's the one who violated, not her, to my knowledge.
Right.
Hopefully, let's not drag her name through the mud. But
right.
Anyway, it's over.
Yeah. And so we're in a whole, sports. I'm watching LeBron, Donna Givens Davidson. You remember when LeBron James came into our basketball league? Because I do. I was around for that. I was, I think, 7 or 6 years old when LeBron, is drafted in the NBA. And soon thereafter, he becomes my favorite player. And now all of my peers are thinking of a future without, whatever you think about LeBron. He's been a really
I love LeBron James. I always have.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a great role model, and he's getting older, and he's not scoring as much anymore. And we see the writing on the wall that is he's going to retire, and it's just a little sad, It's
professional sports, so people have a life cycle, and his has been longer than most because he did start at 18. And I remember when he started, the predictions that he was just going to meet some type of bad end were so great, and instead, what he did was he established businesses. Whatever you think about his relationship with his wife, he has one. They have kids together. He has helped some people out. Many people helped elevate them. And he's had a relatively scandal-free career as a football player. And people expected him, wanted to see him fail. They were really anticipating.
He could have played football. I said he could have played football, basketball.
Basketball, oh my goodness.
He could have played football.
Football's my mind. No, but absolutely basketball.
He was the star wide receiver in high school.
But people wanted his downfall.
They did.
They made fun of him. Remember, he got a Hummer when he was in high school. This is before NIL. And they were like, oh my God, all these bad morals. And what you have seen is somebody who at the very least is leading a pretty average, ordinary life for somebody who makes so much money as a basketball player. Let me get the sport right. There are others who were heralded and seen as role models who have not been as successful as he is both on and off the court. And we start this way with word on the street just because talking about everything else is just going to, turn more of my hair gray. I have to cover up the gray. Let's talk about ICE.
Yeah.
ICE, baby. It's cold outside. We're home because of ICE. But what's going on with ICE?
Advocates, Michigan Immigration Rights Center, advocates with different nonprofits across Detroit, and family members, classmates, teachers of these Western International high school students. You remember back last year, I think Roop Raj did the interview with Mike Duggan. Roop asked Duggan if ICE is showing hostility to Detroiters if they're in our community. How are you going to push back? Will you push back as an independent? He said, we worked with ICE during the first Trump administration. They were not terrorizing our community. That's something that Gabby Santiago Romero and others have said that's not true. They were terrorizing our community. And now, again, fast forward, it seems like the activity and presence of these immigration enforcement officers, agents in the Customs and Border Patrol have increased. Seems like these Western high school students, based on the testimony from their loved ones and advocates, feels like they're being targeted.
Well, they are.
And that's something that, it feels like they're being targeted from their school, right? They're saying that they're getting picked up, being followed home from work sites. There was a man, 34-year-old man with a 1-year-old daughter this week, who his family is asking lawmakers to press ICE on his release. ICE has been given orders from the Trump administration to just sort of deport anyone, detain anyone that is not a permanent legal resident, which is not the way that they have conducted themselves in the past. Typically, they have honored the legal system and process. This man, his name is Ernesto, was awaiting a hearing, as many of these folks are. They'll go to the courthouse, and then all of a sudden, they're picked up. To their surprise, they are picked up and arrested by ICE. And so, if you're the federal government saying, respect our process, we want you to come here legally, but you have to respect the process, and then you're arresting them while they're attempting to go through the legitimate process, as this man Ernesto was, been here since I believe he was 6 years old, maybe even as early as 3 years old. His sister was here. He has a Michigan driver's license, a social security card. He's a construction worker. And so he's a productive member of society with a wife and a child. What threat does he pose?
I think we're arguing on terms that are not necessarily rational in my point of view. We know that this is not about threats. We know that you don't pick high school students up because you accidentally go somewhere because of threats. You're picking them up because you're trying to rid the nation of Black and brown people. And so as many people as you can get out of here, you are. And it's really, really tragic to me. I was in Southwest Detroit. I mention this story a lot because it was such an important and impactful event for me. I was at a poverty research center event in Southwest Detroit, and there was a poet who described ICE, and we're talking about 2017. He was describing ICE and his experience with ICE, and then breaking into homes, them following people around. And then, even in the first Trump administration, little girls walking around with laminated copies of their birth certificates so they could prove that they were citizens of the United States. And, a lot of people have referred to Nazi Germany, but what it makes me think of is slave catchers. These people who are being deputized to go out and find people who are here illegally. Detroit, when I talk about Detroit being a gateway to freedom, there's actually, as you know, a statue commemorating Detroit as the gateway to freedom, because people came from Detroit through the Underground Railroad, which, sorry, Portia Williams, is not an actual Underground Railroad. It was a way to get people out of, forced labor camps in the South into freedom in the North. And they came to Detroit. And sometimes they sent slave catchers to Detroit. And at that time, it was illegal for states to harbor people who had escaped slavery because they were considered property. And it was stolen property if you kept stolen property from being returned to their owners. This is the history of the United States. So we don't have to look at Nazi Germany, understanding that Nazi Germany looked at the United States. And Hitler was influenced by racism and discrimination in the United States, not to minimize what happened in Nazi Germany, but also not to minimize slavery, to understand that racism is part of the DNA of this nation. And at times we suppress it better than others. And it has reared its ugly head. And for us to pretend this is not an attack on race is ridiculous to me. And then for us, those of us who are, multiple generations here, and we are not immigrants, and our grandparents had birth certificates, and we were born here, and we consider this to be our nation. What is it, American descendants of slavery? When they see me, when they see you, when they see another Black person, they see somebody who is not white, and that alone makes us questionable as American citizens. And so I want to say, the poem, first they came for this group, and then they came for the gypsies, and they came for the union workers, then they came from the Catholics, and then they came for me, and there was nobody left to protest. If we're not protesting this now, if we're not putting our arms around physically and metaphorically around people who are being, targeted for abuse and harm, what are we doing? I'm not just a mother, I'm a grandmother. Imagine my grandchildren, imagine my children having this happen. Imagine you and your future children, younger siblings, family members having this happen to them, the terror they must feel, because they're not leaving here and being sent right back to their countries. A lot of times they are detained in something that is equivalent to a concentration camp. There's no tracking them. There's no, way to really do anything to fight for them. And I'm glad that we're fighting back. I'm glad we're saying something, but I'm not certain that any politician or any school board member really has the authority to change these decisions. let's keep going. I know that there have been a couple of success cases, but I think that really we have to think through how we're going to work collectively to try to change this, legally. And I'm not sure what kind of protest will work, but it's absolutely terrifying.
It is. I will tell you that Kenneth Russell, a multi-time guest on this show, was one of the many who spoke last night during a DPSCD Board of Education meeting at Martin Luther King Junior High School. Nicola Viti, the superintendent of the district, has sort of symbolically sided with advocates and activists in a letter. Some folks say the letter is not far enough. They want to guarantee that federal immigration agents do not enter district property. That is something that Viti said last night that they have not done to this point. A lot of folks want the district to take a lot harder stance against this. They say safer transportation, counseling for students that are dealing with this weight over. And could you imagine going through middle school and high school and having the threat of deportation hanging over your head? I mean, that was
in the old days, they had underground railroads, right? An underground railroad was somebody's basement. People built shelters and churches and other places to keep people away out of harm's way. Is there a legal route right now to protect them all the way to the Supreme Court, which still hasn't decided that birthright citizenship is constitutional? We have a Supreme Court that is like, oh, okay, yeah, he should be able to do this and he should be able to do that. And so I don't know that there's a short-term legal solution. And I'm certainly not on here to advocate people breaking the law because I don't want to, get locked up or have anything happen to me. But I am thinking that if we look in history, there are ways that we have protected people who are at harm's way. And I don't know that Nikolai Viti or any politician, no matter how well-intentioned, has the power to do that through the courts or through, any other legal process. I mean, look, he's firing immigration judges. He is deporting people without going through any due process. And when it reaches the Supreme Court is like, let it happen. Because, one of the things that has occurred to me is that the Supreme Court members who are supporting Trump, a lot of them knew exactly what he was going to do. I really do believe that there are people who are planning behind the scenes to make America white again, to bring back white supremacy, and they understand exactly what is expected of them in order to get there. For us to believe that Donald Trump and the Supreme Court members are acting independently of each other, I just don't believe it. I believe the Supreme Court, members of Congress, the president and his administration have all colluded on a mechanism to do something they think is appropriate, and that is to bring back a new America or the old America. I could be wrong, but and I hate to be cynical. Of course, I agree with protests. I'm glad Nikolai Viti signed it. It's unfortunate that the candidate for governor who's running as an independent still has nothing to say on that, or death threats against, Democrats. I mean, he has absolutely nothing to say. He says people are tired of, extremism, things like human rights and that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
One person who is not tired of talking about the rights of our fellow humans is Christine Sauve. She is the communications director at the Michigan Immigration Rights Center. You guys can go and read this wonderful post from earlier today from Hannah Dellinger. She's a reporter at Chalkbeat Detroit. She was at the meeting yesterday night. Yesterday, before the meeting, earlier in the morning, I had talked to Christine, the communications director for the Immigration Rights Center. And, she explained to me that all of these students have pending court dates for asylum cases. This African student, Ba, he's a 19-year-old who came here from Senegal. It's very legitimate reasons. Their representatives and family members say that they're seeking asylum and seeking permanent legal resident status. And so, it's really scary. Donna, I'm going to have to send you this Pablo Torre Finds Out video released yesterday. He interviews one of his reporters working on this story, interviews this man who was featured in one of the El Salvador president's sort of vanity videos, you remember when the White House was resharing and reposting these sort of, just straight torture videos, right? I mean, these people that were not even accused of crimes. Some of the crimes that they're accused of are, they'll have a tattoo that the federal government says is gang related. This man, his tattoo on his arm was a Real Madrid crown with a soccer ball. He's a soccer coach. He has 2 sons, and it's just amazing. His family seeing him in the video. They couldn't make his face out completely, but they could recognize him by his hand. And he's still getting emotional talking about being in this, because they thought they weren't ever getting out. I mean, the way that the guards and the officials inside this maximum security prison are talking to them is as if, they're going to be a part of this prison population for the rest of their life. In Baldwin, it's called North Lake Correctional Facility. There is a former prison that is now an ICE facility. And according to Christine Sauve, it is one of the largest ICE facilities in the country that is a for-profit facility. It's owned by one of a handful of the large firms that are doing work with the federal government right now to house inmates. I think 1,800 beds. But that is where Ba is currently. And that's got to be, not an ideal situation for any of those inmates in there.
It's hate. It's hateful. And it's so hurtful to think about there's no even pretense that we don't hate you. There's just, he shouldn't have had that tattoo. It's, it's so devastating to think about it and to hear about it. And, Baldwin, Michigan, it's close to Baldwin, Michigan. Idlewild, Michigan. The Black Resort, where we used to go. And as a kid, we went to Baldwin every summer. My grandmother had a house in Baldwin. She actually lived in Idlewild. She lived in Idlewild for a while and taught school in Idlewild. So in the old days, people didn't say they were separated, but my grandmother lived full-time in Idlewild, Michigan. My grandfather was in Detroit, and my father was in high school, okay? And she was teaching there. And so growing up, we used to go to Idlewild in the summer to stay in her house. And by then, she'd moved back to Detroit and was actually living with us. But when we stayed in Idlewild, we went to Baldwin all the time. We went to Jones Ice Cream, which is still there. There was a drive-in theater in Baldwin. There was a restaurant, a seafood restaurant we used to go to. My mother always ordered frog legs and said they were delicious, tasted just like chicken. I ordered chicken. Just chicken also tastes like chicken and doesn't look like a frog, But you go there now in Baldwin is a prison town.
Yeah, it's real Trump country. I mean, it's
Trump country, and you used to feel, I felt safe. It never occurred to me that we were unsafe. And we're talking about, 50 years ago, I felt safer in Baldwin, Michigan than I do in 2025. And so, there's things that we can do. There's things that we must do. We must protest. I do want to shout out 482 Forward. I sit on the board of 482 Forward, and they are always on the right side of history. And so 482 Forward has been very active in gathering signatures and protesting this. Kenneth is one of our leaders who participates in 482 Forward as well as many other young people. So shout out to Vali and Imani who have been keeping it real and keeping us focused. But I think that we have to also think through what are some other things that we can do to keep people safe. There's kids who don't want to go to school. Are there other ways to educate children short of having them go to school because they're afraid to leave home? There's workers who are afraid to go to work. Are there other ways for us to support them so that those people who are afraid to leave home, so that we can try to ride out this wave of hatred that hopefully will come to an end in the near future, because some act of God is going to strike down this, this crazy stuff that's happening in our nation. We cannot just wait on legal means of redress. There's got to be things that we can do to support and love on people who are being targeted for incarceration, enslavement. I don't know, are people doing labor in these camps before they send them other places? We don't know what's happening there. So, wow, yeah. Really awful.
talk about Duggan not commenting on this. Somebody that is not going to ask Duggan about ICE is Gary Torgow. He did what the Detroit Economic Forum called Duggan's exit interview.
And we're going to take a break and come back and talk about that exit interview. So let's take a break now. And we'll be back in a minute to have some conversations about what that exit interview looks like.
Detroit 1 Million is a journalism project started by Sam Robinson that centers a generation of Michiganders growing up in a state without a city with 1 million people. Support the only independent reporter covering the 2025 Detroit mayoral race through the lens of young people. Good journalism costs. Visit Detroit1million.com to support Black independent reporting.
We're back. We're going to talk about the exit interview. Gary Torgow interviewed Mike Duggan and didn't ask him anything about all the failing housing projects in the city of Detroit, didn't ask him anything about car insurance not really declining like he said it would. Remember, he spent money getting Marshall Bullock and Adam Ollier into the state Senate so they could help pass legislation that changed and helped car insurance forever and did nothing to lower prices, really. But anyway, tell me about the exit interview.
Well, we did learn an interesting anecdote about the NFL draft last year, that it almost didn't happen, Duggan says, because the security system went out. AT&T rushed to fix it in 45 minutes. And this is all happening like within hours of the draft taking place. Duggan said that he would not have had the draft go on if not for the surveillance system. And I really think about that, is that a political decision or is that a decision out of safety? Do you need a surveillance system?
I mean, is that a political decision or is that a political conversation to have? If you believe that you have 500,000 people in the city of Detroit and you say, look, we're not going to do this. Now that you paid all this money to come here, go home. Great. I don't know. Maybe you can sell ice to Eskimos. I don't know.
It was nearly a disaster, he said. And I just thought that was really funny.
If we could
they say that they severed a fiber optic cable, a crew working on the new hotel adjacent to the Water Square apartments there, those $10,000 apartments that are very nice.
They're owned by Torgow.
Yeah, Torgow is behind there. And Duggan, because he's a caller and a fixer, he loves to talk about, I picked up the phone and I called Mary Barra and we got the thing done. I picked up the phone and I called Dan Gilbert and we got the thing done. Duggan picked up the phone. He called AT&T President David Lewis. It says he was the only person that could fix it. The CEO was the only person that could fix construction crews, severing a fiber optic cable.
I believe the CEOs are well trained in the reconstruction.
An electrician? The CEO is also an electrician.
If I want anything fixed, and by the way, as a person who's a CEO, there's some things you can call me for. There's other things not, okay? Don't call me for everything because there's stuff I don't know how to do. I mean, it's a ridiculous thing. And it's sort of like, name dropping, influence peddling, all of that kind of stuff. The reality is that Detroit has a number of problems that nobody's picked up the phone and called, and they're going to be dropped on the doorstep of our mayor-elect, things that have been simmering for a while. And I think it is fair to give Duggan credit for those things that Duggan has done well. And I think it is fair to give him credit for those things that have not gone well. The challenge is that our news media has been really soft peddling all of this. I'm reading articles in the paper that are saying things that really should have us concerned about the condition and the stability of housing in our city. And nobody's tying any of this to Duggan's decision-making. Not in the news media. It's sort of like, ooh, this is happening. This is happening. Now you can get credit for building it. I built 10,000 affordable units, which is, a lot of people say it's not true, but you're not getting credit for building something that didn't work. And when it doesn't work, then people are, well, wait a minute, can we really trust this incoming mayor to keep up the good work? If this falls apart on her watch, that's my issue with news coverage. I think maybe I wouldn't even be so hard on Duggan if the news did a better job of holding him accountable. Mm-hmm. With the issue related to Guyanga, all of that was laid at Mary Sheffield's feet. And almost none of it at the feet of the person who approved the contract, who approved the contractor and who is responsible for monitoring his activities. All of it is laid at the feet of the person who joined the rest of city council in saying yes to a contract the mayor asked her to sign. And so I think it's frustrating. And now you have this person saying, look at all these great things I've done, and now I'm going to do it for the whole state. And I don't think he's going to be governor. I just don't. I think you said some time ago, and you and I fought over this or disagreed with this, that you thought it was going to be John James, right? And I said, I don't think so. But at this point, the polls are sort of reinforcing or supporting what you're saying, and that is that Duggan is drawing disproportionately from Democrats as opposed to Republicans. And you know that Republicans act like mob, they're in the mob. They all do the same thing. There's very little disagreement among them, whereas Democrats have so much more, internal conflict. And I think you're probably right at this point. And
I think my point earlier was that it's going to take a sort of historic effort from a Democrat. It's been 3 or 4 decades since a Democrat has won the governor's office in Michigan 3 straight terms.
Yeah,
I hear
you.
Uncommon. We're a purple swingy state. And so when we see something for 8 years, typically we get tired of it and say, we want the other thing.
But there's nothing typical about what's happening now.
There is not.
We have not had MAGA in my lifetime until now. We've had bad things, not MAGA. And we certainly did not have a popular so-called Democrat running as an independent in the state. And so this throws everything up in the air. But at a time like this, where so many things feel threatened, I have many criticisms of the Democratic Party. Don't get me started. But the consolidation of power by Republicans at every level of government under MAGA is scary to me. And the one thing we have that could serve as a partial safeguard is having a Democrats occupy State House, Senate, and the gubernatorial mansion. Mm-hmm. We have somebody running for office who refuses to even criticize ever or disagree with ever this person who is sending ICE into schools, this person who is sending ICE into workplaces, that is putting children in concentration camps and breaking up families. And if you can't disagree with them ever, that's really scary to me. If he wants to run as an independent, I don't have to love you, right? I just want to know that you can say there's a line that you can't cross and I'm going to defend, because remember what a president wants to do. The president wants to send the National Guard into the city of Detroit. The president can't do that without gubernatorial consent. Not yet. And so now you have the absence of any resistance to the president's agenda. If he's running for office, don't just tell me about how you made Detroit great again or whatever else you want to do. Help me understand how you're going to protect the citizens of Detroit from a clearly, openly hostile federal government.
In fairness to Duggan, he doesn't say that, but he will talk about Dearborn when several right-wing provocateurs, some Laura Loomer adjacent social media people, I forget the guy's name. I'm not even going to repeat it on this show because he's so irrelevant, from Florida. They came to Dearborn, and he did, off his campaign account, release like a 90-second video about condemning hate as it related to the people that brought things into Dearborn. So I think there is a line to the effect of he was willing to talk about hate and prejudice when it is convenient or advantageous.
I think we can all disagree with hate. Right. I think,
Well, I don't know. Republicans, I find it hard pressed a lot of times.
But I'm talking about actions, not conversations. Right. I'm saying right now we have ICE in our city and he is mayor of our city. He is not mayor of Dearborn.
Right.
He wants votes from Dearborn residents who, by the way, he thinks he can get that can help propel him to the White House. So, of course, that's that. Oh, don't hate these people. But you're mayor of the city of Detroit. And as mayor of the city of Detroit, where are you? When during Trump's first term, when you had Black Lives Matter, protesters out in the streets, Duggan's Republican police chief was harassing protesters in the city of Detroit who were arguing for Black Lives Matter. On Duggan's watch, when people came from outstate and were harassing the people who were counting votes, the police chief, his Republican police chief, said they have the right to free speech. So it's okay to harass poll workers. It's okay to harass these people, but it's not okay to march without creating any type of violence. There were things that were done to intimidate or to create violence, and it happened on his watch. And then on his watch, they actually tried to have these people prosecuted. They defended a lawsuit, and then after the lawsuit was over, then they came back and tried to give new penalties to the same people who were just protesting peacefully. One of them had a chokehold around her neck, and it was on the front page of a paper. Where was the voice of the mayor saying, this is wrong? This is unacceptable for my police department to do this?
I will tell you one interesting thing that I noticed recently related to Duggan's independent gubernatorial campaign was the fact that when I was tweeting about Zoran Memdani in a completely separate context, I received a reply. I think it was about Abraham Ayash, who just finally is acknowledging that he is running against Justin Onwenu. It took a minute for Abe to come out. He has not yet publicly announced his campaign, but you can go read my story on Michigan Chronicle right now. I think it was when Abe and Mary were meeting outside of Northwest Activities Center on the day of the election. The day of the election, we learned from CNN's Aaron Burnett that Mike Duggan was actually in New York. Mm-hmm. Why do you think Mike Duggan was in New York on election night? I don't know. I haven't asked. But I thought it was interesting in the context of I was tweeting about Zoran and Abraham Ayash, mm-hmm. and I get a reply from none other than the City Desk NYC bot. Now, what is City Desk NYC bot? I might be getting that phrase out of order, but it's a Twitter account that Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo, paid for while he was running for mayor to just reply to every single Zoran tweet with a negative thing. And the bot replied with advocating for Mike Duggan. I mean, it was a Duggan has done, things because of a straightforward, it hasn't been because of DSA style politics. When Gary Torgau, I mentioned in the exit interview, why do you think two Democratic socialists were successful in their city council election? Duggan said, I don't think it was because of the philosophy. I think it was because of the door knocking strategy, which, yes.
Who did Duggan support in District 7?
Right. Yes. Gabby and Denzel door knocked the hell out of Tyrone.
But who did Duggan?
Support? Well, because of what they were saying. And
who did Duggan support in District 7?
Duggan supported Karen Whitsett.
Yes. Karen Whitsett, who stymied any kind of recess activity in the Michigan House, really, and blamed Republicans, Democrats, and sided with Republicans. So, he's going to try to disavow what she said. Now, here's where I have just one little caveat. I think I was reading that Donald Trump is saying he's trying to pass a bill to put $1,000 to $1,500 in these flexible spending accounts for taxpayers to help them with their insurance premiums that are increasing. If your insurance premium is increasing by even $200 per month, that's not enough. And a lot of people are predicting that insurance premiums are going to increase by a lot more than that. When you look at the loss of services, when you look at some of the other things that are happening, the real question is, will Democrat socialists become more popular in Michigan than anybody anticipated? I don't think anybody expected Montgomery to win in New York. But I believe that there's possibly untapped support for more progressive agendas. I think that there's possibly some type of movement. And you do have a gubernatorial candidate who is at least flirting with the Democratic Socialist Party, and that's Garland Gilchrist. And so if we were to have a wave of support for that in our state, and mind you, this is a state that both supported, oh my goodness, I can't think of, George Wallace and Jesse Jackson for president. Okay, this state, we have supported people at political extremes in the past. We have
in 16,
Bernie Sanders did really well. And that's without having the complete collapse of the social safety net. That's without having the hunt for people who are immigrants. And so I think that the real question is, opinion polls show that a lot of what is being done is unpopular. And the real question is whether or not some democratic socialists in our state will be able to capitalize on that.
Yeah.
I personally don't believe that the Democrats have elected a very strong or powerful alternative to James and Duggan, because she has a lot of detractors in Detroit.
You talk about Jocelyn Benson.
There are a lot of people who believe that she is racist, and she has done a lot of racist things. And so there could be an anti-Jocelyn Benson vote that we have not calculated.
In fairness to her, what is the racist thing you're mentioning? I want to make sure that that's
that she has fired black men, that she has done very racist things to black men who have worked for her. There is a former employee of hers who sued her for racism not too long ago. But that's especially among a lot of younger people that I know who have a lot of criticisms about her. And it's not always talked about, in open circles, and it may not go anywhere. But I'm just saying, I think that when you have a candidate who is seen as racist, it kind of is a threat to their candidacy.
One of the things that I'm hearing about Jocelyn Benson in this current moment is her relationship to Ryan Friedrichs, who's obviously pushing hard for this data center. He's the second in command to the vice president of related companies, development companies for Stephen Ross owns. And Oracle, OpenAI, is trying to put a data center in Saline. I'm hearing rumblings that there may be more communities that will get these data centers that want to build. And I'm hearing there's going to be more than just what is with the Saline.
There's 10 under consideration. And what happens is but Saline would be the largest. And when they go in there, Saline residents said, we don't want it. The reason that they eventually caved is because, the people with the big bucks is Oracle and ChatGPT threatened to sue, and they could not defend a lawsuit. And so they went ahead with it. I think this is where things get really interesting, because I don't know that there are any clean hands on any partisan side. I think that's where, again, the Democratic Socialist side is the side where you're seeing a lot of willingness to protest things.
When I think about Garland, though, do you think he would be willing to come out against data centers being?
Absolutely.
So?
I think
I don't know. I don't know. I haven't heard that from him. I know he worked at Google for years.
He did work at Google, but that's not, I think that I believe that he wants to win. And if he wants to win, that's his path to victory, is to align himself with Democratic Socialists. Running as, Whitmer Light won't go. And I think that when people...
Not in the context of she's not endorsing him also.
Well, she's not endorsing him because, again, I think that he has also aligned himself with various causes. He's talked about corporate PAC money. He's talked about, the Gaza as genocide. He has really come out and said the kinds of things that alienate your mainstream Democrats. He may run, if he runs an independent campaign, I don't know. I just think that there's a lot of wild cards because we are in unprecedented times. I don't think that we can look to the past to dictate what will happen in the future. I wonder whether or not the politics of the moment are being captured by either mainstream party or, this guy who's the certain mayor of Detroit, who is somewhere between a Democrat and a Republican, I just don't know if that's the moment that we're in. If we're in a moment of crisis and that crisis is perceived as crisis by your average American person, then we're going to see some difference. We're going to come back, take a break and come back, and we're going to talk about Aish versus ONU. It's an interesting race. I know you're really excited about it because you are a journalist, and this is going to be great political conversation. Two people who we like running against each other. It doesn't happen very often. Be right back.
Interested in renting space for corporate events, meetings, conferences, social events, or resource fairs? The Mash Detroit Small Business Hub is a 6,000 square feet space available for members, residents, and businesses and organizations. To learn more about rental options at Mash Detroit, contact Nicole Perry at nperry@ecn-detroit.org or 313-331-3485.
And we're back to talk about Abraham Aish and Justin Owenu, both of whom I consider friends, now running against each other possibly. Can you talk about that, Sam? What are you hearing, and how do you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. Today, the news was that Justin received an endorsement from Wayne County Executive Warren Evans. He is really consolidating support in Detroit. A lot of the Black establishment Democrats that have been operating for some years and whose name really carries weight when you talk about endorsements. You know, he's certainly got the heavy hitters like Joe Tate, Black Democratic Caucus, Keith Williams. He's got Jonathan Kinlock. He's got now Warren Evans, and he's got a host of River Rouge.
Aren't these other people who supported Solomon? Okay, anyway, go on.
Well, that was my intro. He's got a host of endorsements early on. I do think we are going to see a lot of legislators that know Abe personally back Ayash. Ayash, of course, was at one point the majority floor leader. That's second in command, second highest ranking official in the state house. He's moved from Hamtramck. A lot of different factors go into that, according to him, and I'm sure he'll have an opportunity to explain why he felt the need to no longer represent Hamtramck in the legislature. But there's a lot of people asking, why are you running for this seat? Given that it's downriver, why not? With Stephanie Chang's position, why not wait and see? What it looks like after next year's election. He stepped down early in light of the term limit changes. And so he'll be on the ballot this August against Justin, and I'm sure other Democrats might step into the race. They might not want to, though, because Justin and Abe are expected to be the lead fundraisers in this Democratic primary that I think will reveal, the attitudes of downriver voters. Justin, in his intro launch, pointing out the fact that, minus former state senators Marshall Bullock and Adam Ollier, there no longer is a Black male in the state Senate. We have Sarah Anthony and Erica Geis who won't be there. But Sylvia Santana as well is a state senator, Black woman state senator from Detroit. So he'll point that out in his pitch. He is obviously have experience as a environmental organizer and activist. He is a attorney and has taught classes about union and labor rights. Justin is the first ever director of entrepreneurship. That is a position that he works for under Mayor Mike Duggan for the city of Detroit, and is just generally tapped in with what's going on. You compare it to Abe, who is sort of going to mark off every single progressive litmus test item, right? He's going to say that war in Gaza is a genocide. He's going to say, I'm not taking corporate PAC money and you should be suspicious of all the lawmakers that are. He is going to say the things that I think a lot of voters on the Democratic left who were unhappy with the Democratic Party are going to want to hear. And I think Justin, while his identity is certainly, he was an organizer for Bernie Sanders' campaign back in 2020, comes from an environmental organizing background. When you ask him about corporate PAC money, he says, I don't think DTE would quite frankly want to give me money. I've spent years working against their efforts. So it is really interesting. I think clearly another sort of microcosm race of the infighting within the Democratic Party. And, of course, Abe and Justin know each other. They have a relationship to a degree, which, we're going to see how contentious it gets.
Yeah. Two things. One, I like both of them. When I started teaching at Columbia, that's when Justin started at law school at Columbia University. So I feel this kinship, listen, we started at the same time he's done. I don't think I'm done. I like him, and he has done a lot of good things, right? In 2024, I believe Ayush invited me to the State of the State to be his guest, and I sat on the floor of the chamber right next to him, right in the Capitol building, and I was really honored. I don't know him, and he, liked my politics, and so he invited me there as a representative from his district, and so, I have a certain level of appreciation and respect for the fact that he, showed up and wanted representation from the east side of Detroit. That was cool, right? We make politics personal, and we say, I want this kind of person to be elected. And then, we get real tribal with it, right? And I mean, listen, I'm so happy we have a Black woman mayor, but not, that's something that feels good to me, but it's not why I voted for Mary Sheffield, right? And I think that we do want representation, but I want representation of people who stand with me on political issues. The fact of some of these endorsements actually is a turnoff to me. And what I want to know from Justin is, do you stand with Keith Williams? Are you going to stand with the sort of, conservative Black, capitalist side of the Democratic Party? Are you really going to stand up on some issues that people who are progressive want to see as issues? All things being equal, this is Justin's community. I don't know. I really want to know what they're running on, what they're saying. We know what Abraham Ayush will do in the Senate because we know what he did at the House.
Yeah. We know what his coalition will look like as well. I mean, it's going to feature people like Stephanie Chang and Rashida near him, right?
Stephanie, I love Stephanie. I absolutely love Stephanie Chang. She is somebody who has been a friend of the organization. She has stood up when we need to stand up, and she is also a Chinese American woman. And I know people who are running against her saying we need a Black woman in that seat. And, so now you have Black and brown people fighting each other. And, again, what do you stand for? Stephanie has been advocating for things that matter to me. And she shows up at every event that we have. She's always supporting the work that we do in every way that she can, not just us, but everybody I know. I just think she's great. And so I don't want my support for this race, even though I don't vote in that district, to be about the identity of the person. Right. And as much as I hate the term identity politics, I want it to be about what they stand for, who their coalition is, and what I think they're going to do to bring about justice in our state. Because right now, whether you are Black, brown, Asian, whatever you are, we are all at risk. And hatred towards us is there. Now, of course, I know Justin loves our people and he's an environmental justice person. But again, what will you stand for and what will you do if you're elected into office? Because some of the people that same cast of characters have supported have not stood with us. So that's where I stand.
Well, I will say, I think that's a pretty good way to leave it off there. You guys can go read my initial report on Abe Ayush, who has not yet publicly announced his campaign. He did file back in October, but Justin versus Abe is going to be quite the race when it comes to the people standing behind them. I think we're going to see some sort of people who are typically very close to each other sort of be unfortunately pitted against each other in this race.
And I don't like that. I know that for you as a journalist, this makes it much more exciting. But as, a person who is really pushing for justice as an activist, it's not exciting. As an activist, I kind of wish that one of them had chosen to run in a different race and done something differently, because we could use
what I'm hearing from a lot of folks.
Yeah. And so, if I had any advice, I'd say, maybe there's a different pathway. I don't know what the residency laws are in terms of having to live in a certain area before you, run for office. I don't know if it's too late to move, but it's not too late to move. Maybe I should consider that, so that we, because there is, and I think it's legitimate. I don't want to delegitimize the desire to have Black representation. It means something, right? And I don't want to minimize the fact that it means something. It just doesn't mean everything, right? But if you are running and threatening the possibility of Black representation, is that your best look? Or can you find a way to run and support Black representation where it looks like it's doable? I mean, that's the other flip side of it. I do want Owen to prove to me that he's not Keith Williams. I don't think he has to prove he's not, but that he'll fight him.
I don't think Justin Owen is Keith Williams. I'll say that.
You know what I mean. I want to know that he can be really independent and challenge those narratives.
Right.
But, at the same time, and I'll also say that some of the same people did support Denzel McCampbell. And
Justin supported Denzel McCampbell. Exactly. He donated to him.
Yeah. Yeah. So did Abraham. So did Aish. I was at an event where they were both there. Okay. So it's like, so as an activist, as a person who is a citizen just wanting to see good things happen in our state, I think that would be a very disturbing race that I absolutely hope doesn't happen.
Well, Justin and Abe, if you're listening, you guys can make that happen. But in lieu of that, I want to say again, as we approach these holiday times, thank you all for listening. I really appreciate the messages on Twitter and Instagram and my emails. You guys say, "Oh, another episode." People are loving the Maxwell Murray episode from last week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I want to give another shout out to him right now.
Amazing. Can we just talk about Maxwell Murray? He is so amazing. I'm so glad that you introduced us. And I really enjoy this. This is going to be our last episode for the year.
Yeah.
And, so I just want to thank you, Sam, because I remember I texted you earlier in the year and said, "Hey, you want to do a podcast together?" And you didn't hesitate. You were like, "Yes." And we've been doing it together since February or March or something like that. I know.
And we have so many episodes that I'll just listen, and my mom listens to, and my Twitter people will listen to and say, "Oh, you said this on the podcast." Is it, I just really appreciate all the engagement and all of the feedback. I appreciate you, Donna, for hosting this show with me and inviting me here to be a part of the Authentically Detroit Network, the Black Detroit Democracy Podcast, the Sam and Donna Experience, as some of my fans have said to me.
Some people have talked about that to me too. They're like, "Okay, you and Sam have really interesting dynamic," and they love it, right? And I think that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be intergenerational. It's supposed to be a little bit different. We don't see eye to eye on everything.
Yeah,
but I think we care about things together, and I think
we do. I certainly do. I try to remain in my role as an objective and neutral reporter. Sometimes I can't. I'm a real person in the world, man, and I hope you guys all know that. So thank you, Donna. Thank you, everyone that listens to us.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. It's been a pleasure. I do want to also acknowledge that. Oh my goodness, I had a thought and it just left me. So anyway, if I don't remember before we're done, I want to thank you. I want to thank Sarah for producing us. Yes. I want to thank Orlando for supporting us. I want to thank Connor for engineering us, and Jalen for recording us and putting us on Facebook. We have a great team. I'm really excited about what the new year is going to bring. This is what I wanted to say. I wanted to say that right now, Netflix has, offered to purchase HBO, Disney, that whole conglomerate, right? Did I get it right?
Yeah, monopoly. They're trying to purchase whatever it is.
That monopoly.
Warner Brothers.
The Warner Brothers. And then Paramount comes in with a hostile bid to go right to the shareholders and say, we'll spend more per thing. But what we see is a consolidation of media. What we see is a silencing of voices that are independent, because whenever you consolidate voices, that means you're shutting some out. Yeah. There's never been a more important time for independent media like Detroit 1 Million, and certainly like this podcast and other podcasts where we're giving it to you straight, unbought, unbossed, just doing it because we actually love the causes that we are supporting. So Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, whatever you celebrate. I just really want to say once again, thank you so much for listening to the Black Detroit Democracy Podcast. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. And of course, support Black independent reporting on Detroit1million.com because good journalism costs.
Thank you.